We're going to finish now with one panel. We're going to be talking about the current investment climate and the adoption of crypto. I'm going to pass you over to my esteemed colleague, Fiona Cooper, who is our content director. So Fiona's going to introduce you to the team. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for coming back. I hope you've had a nice drink. We're going to be talking lots of things about investment and about adoption over the next 20 minutes. So we have a great team to answer those questions. I'm going to bring up first Charles Storry, who's Head of Strategic Partnerships at SVK Crypto.
Thank you.
And next up, we've got Matthew Newton, who's an account manager at eToro, specializing in high net worth investors. And then Marina Titova, Head of ICO Advisory at NKB Group. And finally, Rowan Stone, who's Director of Business Development at ZenCash. And I'm Fiona Cooper. Are we okay with where everyone's sitting? There was some kind of thing about everybody sitting in certain places, and I don't think they're where they're supposed to be. But never mind. I'm Fiona Cooper. I'm helping Patrick and the rest of the team manage speakers and exhibitors at the shows we've got coming up, and I'm sure we'll tell you a bit about those in a bit. So we've got a number of questions to ask, and we're going to start off talking about crypto adoption. And Matthew, I know that recently in a paper with Imperial College, you started talking about Bitcoin replacing fiat within a decade. So I'm quite excited about that. I think all of us as investors should be too. So what do you think it's going to take for that to actually happen?
Okay, well, just to put a little bit of context behind the research, at the beginning of the year when things started to die down a little bit, we wanted to understand the people who were investing in crypto. And just over the last year, we found that people really didn't know an awful lot about cryptocurrency. So the difference between a cryptocurrency or a crypto commodity, breaking down crypto assets, it was more just dive in on the speculation and learn later. So there was a lot of concepts that people didn't really understand. So we wanted to get a bit of research out there where people could understand what crypto actually was. To define a token or what Bitcoin is or distributed ledger technology. And then also look at the challenges that something like Bitcoin has ahead of it to be adopted. So we focused on things like scalability, regulation, privacy, incentives, adoption. And these were the challenges that crypto has to overcome. So ultimately, the type of things that we need to focus on is the three functions of money that really exist. So, medium of exchange, unit of account, and the store of value. And we feel that it is already fulfilling the purpose of store of value, but it has to overcome the other two. So things like adoption are going to be by merchants and users is going to be the key fact for that in the emergence of the technology.
So this is really key for eToro. Obviously, as an exchange, you want more and more people to become involved. So are you working in any way with merchants to work out how they can best adopt cryptocurrencies in their businesses?
We're not working with it specifically. I mean, we've obviously championed cryptocurrencies. We're a regulated broker with a favorable view of cryptocurrencies, and we've been in it for a long time. But what we want to try and do is do our bit to really help educate people in learning about it, because ultimately money, from the very beginnings has been an evolutionary step from the barter economy to where we are now. It's gone from, money obviously being a commodity that people can use to exchange goods, and people don't really understand what money is. So it was a case of really trying to determine and define what money is, and to look at the steps that it needs to overcome for this next evolution of money to really become adopted by the mainstream.
Are there any other of the panel who can comment on what we can do to enhance adoption and really get cryptocurrencies being used more in our daily lives?
Yeah, you need a stable coin. Bitcoin itself probably won't be the transactional crypto that we'll see. It will be a stable token, such as Haven. There's a few others out there, something that people can trust, that doesn't have the volatility of the crypto space. Because if you're a merchant and someone bought a coffee from you for $2, next day it's worth $4, and you're going to be pretty upset that you paid $4 for a coffee that was worth $2. You need a stable coin, something that doesn't have volatility within, something people can trust, and that's something that can be accepted by merchants and consumers at the end of the day.
Another aspect of that is obviously an ecosystem that is easy to use. So it was one of the functions, or one of the areas of adoption that we focused on. You know, right now it's a lot of technical jargon, and each year it's a lot easier for people to get into crypto, but still we have a long way to go. So if you look at something like Dash, they ultimately want to build a PayPal easy platform that people can exchange crypto. So apart from the volatility side of things, we also need a back end that people can use and really exchange easily. And I think that's also going to be a big part of the adoption.
But you have to think about it as well. Everyone has a mobile phone and everyone uses mobile banking, and you're pretty close to the adoption being there already, right? Of a wallet. But it just needs to be accessible, and it needs to be easy enough for my grandmother to be able to send me Bitcoin or to send me a stable token for me to transact with. And that's what needs to occur, and we're pretty close to getting to that level.
Completely agree with that, absolutely. I think the two main focuses from our side for this year is definitely usability and utility.
Yeah.
At the moment, I mean, the phrase that I keep using, that we keep using, is bringing crypto from the geeks to the masses.
Yeah.
Because it is way too complicated, completely agree. But there's also the lack of real utility. We need to create something that people actually want to use, rather than just having a kind of speculatory asset that somebody wants to hold. So usability and utility is kind of the main two focuses for us to try and tackle adoption.
And linked with that, I guess, is also from institutional investor perspective is custody of funds, and that has still not been really properly solved for crypto. It's still an issue for institutional investors, and that's also part of the
So can you explain a little bit what you mean by custody of funds?
Yes, so because in fact with crypto you have to worry about private keys, how you store it, and things like that, right? For in traditional in other asset classes that institutional investors have to deal with, they know they have a custodian and the assets are safely in place with it. In crypto, you either have to figure it out yourself, as again many of the kind of more prominent crypto investors have solved for themselves, but it's a long process and it's quite an expensive one, right? Or rely on very few custodians that exist and that have not to date offered fully, say, compliant solutions. Like in the US, you have to be SEC registered custodian. So
but that's more institutional, like retail,
exactly.
Which is really where this is the adoption. It doesn't really need the institutional custodian.
No, that's what I said, from institutional investor perspective, not from the retail.
But from an individual basis, it's about the usability of private keys and all this kind of thing, which is, again, what Matt was saying, a real usability issue for individuals on the street who might want to think about using crypto for actual transactions. Then the fact that you have to have private keys and all the rest of it is somewhat bamboozling to most people, because that's not what they're used to dealing with. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Fair comment.
Even just the address. I mean, human readable addresses would make a huge difference to how somebody perceives crypto. It doesn't change the actual technical skill required to execute, but when you open a wallet and the first thing you're confronted with as a kind of person that's not in the crypto space is 30 addresses that just look like complete gobbledygook, you're immediately going to go, oh, too complex, and just put it down. So we need to kind of create nice, simple, sleek applications that are easy to grasp. And like you say, you can give it to your grandma or your next door neighbor, and they can immediately go, right, I can send 1 Bitcoin or 2 Bitcoin, and it's nice and simple.
In a previous life, I was a usability expert, and I just cringe at the state of crypto at the moment. So, It
But
does
I'm
have
sure
a,
you can go back, as I think
Oh, yeah,
Shane
yeah,
was
yeah.
saying
Yeah,
earlier.
go back
you know,
6 months even, it's come on. So,
Yeah.
you know, things are vastly improving, and as hopefully they'll improve at that exponential rate that they have done in the past 6 months, and we'll see something amazing by this time next year.
That's the job of the developers ultimately.
Yeah,
They're the
so
ones
come on,
that
developers. If
comes
anyone's
down to the
developing in this
incentive
space,
side of things too.
really start looking at usability, because it's a major factor in adoption. My next question is kind of related to that, actually. It's for Rowan. ZenCash has recently joined together with IOHK for the purposes of research, so I'd like you to tell me a little bit about that. But I also noticed that IOHK has a major objective of getting the 3 billion people who don't have access to financial institutions into the financial system. And is that, as a sector, fundamental for crypto adoption, or are they driving it?
They're certainly trying. I think everybody has a piece to play in that. For the IOHK partnership, we've already talked about the kind of adoption problems. So from our perspective, we perceive it as utility and usability. From the technology side, though, we've got two pretty glaring holes, if you like. We have scaling. Bitcoin now is at a point where it's kind of creaking at the seams, and whenever anything big happens, it starts to fumble. And we've had the long-standing argument of how to tackle that problem. So scaling is problem number one, and governance is problem two. So that's what IOHK have been targeted with going and researching. They've got a paper out already on the kind of what we're coining our next generation voting system. So it's an incentivized voting system that requires some skin in the game in the ZenCash ecosystem to participate. And the kind of aim there is to ensure that we are censorship resistant. So having just a single team as a single point of failure, we want to remove ourselves from being a single point of failure and kind of open up some of the really important decisions to the community.
That sounds pretty cool. And as far as sort of third world adoption and that kind of thing goes, is that something that IOHK are working on? And what's your view on, well, is Zen being adopted as globally as you would like?
It's early days, so we're around about a year old. We currently have a team of 54 people. We've recently professionalized, so split into distinct divisions, and our kind of business development division, if you like, is really well distributed. So we're trying to put boots on the ground in every region all around the world, primarily because it's silly for me sitting up in Scotland to try and do business development in Russia or in Latin America or in China. So we put boots on the ground in every locality. They're the specialists in their own markets, and we try and drive adoption that way. Specifically in kind of the unbanked, we're just about to make a bit of a push into India, which is a really important market for that problem, and we're already making tracks in Africa. So that's the kind of two places that we're working actively.
Fantastic. And I'm seeing some major developments in the zone of sort of third world development as well within the blockchain, which is a really interesting area. Charles, I know that SVK is obviously huge in London, doing massive things to promote the community and bring the community together, and you're doing your podcast daily, which is really exciting, and you know, communicating major news to everybody as it comes up, which is great. But I know that you also, as SVK, you travel the world and you see lots of different things happening, and I'm wondering if there are any things that you're seeing in other places that would be interesting to bring back here.
I mean, it's an interesting question. With the job, we have the luxury of traveling all over the world, Asia, the States, Europe. I think London itself is the most engaged community that we have ever come across. We're very passionate
That's great to hear.
Well, we're passionate about our community here in London, and I think the questions that are asked at all of our events are way further ahead than other places.
Wow.
I think Asia's got a pretty interesting community, and I think they're pretty developed. But the UK itself, being a financial hub, you have a lot of smart people here who really understand the aspects of opportunity, and I think they really understand, the smart ones, what's going on here. I know a lot of people from the city who have converted over to this space, not officially, unofficially.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are very engaged in what's going on here in London. And by the way, if you're not in London, you're not from London, London is this great hub and everyone thinks great of it. We're here, so we understand that it's just a normal place like anywhere else.
Plenty of people are coming from elsewhere to here.
You
I've
do
met a few
indeed.
of them tonight.
But everyone expects London and the New Yorks and Seoul to be the leaders. when you're not from here. They really do. They think it's a magical party that happens here every day. So it's something we need to deliver
Well, so let's
on.
make it a magical party, right?
Well, we look, when I was saying earlier in the year, we wanted to really understand our clientele. For the group, the eToro group, the UK is actually the strongest. It's the crypto region of eToro. And we do have a high, we looked at it, there's a map that we always put up in our lecture when we do a presentation, but the high concentration is the southeast, around London, but it's distributed, our clients are distributed all over the country. We're not just southeast, but there is something in the UK. They have got, they piled onto crypto last year, and there's a real interest here. So London has to lead the way from that point of view.
Absolutely, London's going to lead the way, but we really believe in the global community. So not having a geographical place as well, I think, is very key, because developers and people in the space who can really add value, can really help everyone move forward, are not necessarily based in a capital city in the world. They can be based anywhere as long as they have an internet connection.
There's plenty of people based in Bali, and the Cayman Islands, and a few other places that we might mention, which makes a lot of sense. Why not? I know there's a big community in New Zealand as well, people interested in the space. And if you can go somewhere beautiful, then let's make that happen too. So it kind of makes money much more transferable, and that's part of what started crypto, obviously. So we're going to move on to talk about a bit of investment now. Marina, I know you look particularly at ICOs, so I'm interested to know what you think are the key areas we should be looking at, sectors that are really hot at the moment in terms of ICOs, and if you have any hot tips on ICOs that are coming up, then we'd love to know those too, but I'll ask that down the panel too.
Well, I would say the biggest subsector I'm really keen on, and I see a lot of good projects working on, is data monetization, right? So there's a this very big trend that we have seen, like Facebook, Twitter, all the big companies effectively monetizing our data, right? And then the crypto philosophy, I think, goes very much in line with that idea that it should be us ourselves being able to monetize our data, right? Whichever types of data it generates. So I have seen fantastic projects, for example, health data. It's very difficult to do, say, clinical trials, data trials, and blockchain provides fantastic opportunities for that. Again, genomic data along the same lines. Then I would say that generally the company that is going to do very successful data monetization protocol will probably be worth billions, right? I have seen companies kind of starting doing it from the financial space, monetizing, say, trading data as well, that is then later bought, say, by hedge funds to build algorithm on top of that, like Marina does, for example. So that's, I would say, is the sector that I'm most excited, and we're working on 2 mandates around that.
Anyone else want to chip in with sectors that they're watching with complete interest at the moment?
I think you have to look at a sector with a lot of users. Gaming is a huge sector, has a lot of users, people that really understand tech, people that have already been trading virtual currencies, virtual goods, virtual gold. These guys get it, and that's a sector that I think really needs the killer dApp, the decentralized application, to bring them into the space. And if you look at the entire crypto space, you need that killer dApp to bring people over. We don't really have that yet. CryptoKitties arguably was that, but I say that was kind of seasonal. I don't think that was the killer dApp that we really needed. It'd probably be more of a social messenger type application.
You need Fortnite for crypto.
Well, that's a game that would work as well. That would bring users over. It would engage people, and it would allow young people to really understand how to trade, how to hold virtual currencies.
Very young people.
Very young people, and I think that'd be very key for the whole space.
So, we talked about adoption earlier. What about bringing older people and women into the space?
I mean, listen, everyone's welcome in the space, and it'd be great to bring everyone over. I think really to understand adoption, we have to look back at the 90s. What was the killer application back then? It was email. Email was the application that allowed everyone...
So that was about communication.
Communication, allowed people to engage. If you were an email and I wasn't, I wanted to get email so I can communicate with you. We haven't had that yet, and what that will be, potentially, is a social media type application, a dApp. That will give the ability for people to message, for people to share content, and give everyone a reason. But the truth is, the users who will be using that technology won't know they're using blockchain technology because it will be so well coded and it will be so well developed, you won't notice
so
it.
I signed up for Steemit recently.
Great.
Which is cool, but pretty difficult to use. It's not got its usability sussed at all, and it's completely dominated at the moment by gamers and crypto nuts. So have you come across any other projects in the space that are trying to do that kind of thing that are more usable? Because I'd love to find them.
Yeah, I can give you a whole list full, but will they be able to execute and actually bring over the mass amount of people? That's yet to be seen.
Okay, so that's the big question on everyone's minds. Who's going to be the one who kills it with the first application to actually get people in quickly?
Who's going to be wanting to create and develop that? And that goes back to what do we need to do that? Well, we need developers, as Steve Ballmer once said in a famous Microsoft video. That's what we need. That's what the space needs to build these killer and cool applications.
I'd argue that we need developers, and usability experts.
We need you, Fiona. That's what we need.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, it takes more than just developers to build a killer app. It's going to take lots of different professions to kind of pull together and create something that really works and really draws.
So if we can get diversity into the development teams, then we stand a better chance of bringing diversity into the user base.
Yeah, for sure.
As long as they can execute.
As long as they can execute, So that's the key. The developers have to be hot shit, right? But then you need the others on the side as well to say, okay, you're going down a really developer-y route here. This is not going to appeal. We need to think out of the box a bit in terms of this. Cool. Okay. So anyone got a project that they would think is a great investment opportunity at the moment?
I'll let Matt kick it off.
Top tips.
You're the man for that one right there.
Well, right now, I think having gone through the last year and, being full of beans when you're just diving into projects, I think, you have to, at this point, you really have to turn up the bullshit filter and go through projects with a fine-tooth comb. And what seemed really cool that you might have jumped in last year, all of a sudden you're thinking, and you learn, you win or you learn. So for me, I'm more focused on the protocols right now. So the likes of EOS, Cardano, Neo, I'm not sure. I mean, the likes of Charles can they'll have a bit more, a bit more experience diving deep into these projects. But I think from the actual protocol layer, building these dApps, that's what I kind of focus on. So nothing too left field. I like EOS, I like Cardano, and Bitcoin. They're really the ones that have the majority of my holdings right now.
Yeah, that's really interesting because that brings me back to a question from my esteemed colleague on my right here, Patrick, who was asking me to ask the question of you guys, how much weighting do you think you should put to the platform that things are being built on when you're assessing a project?
I mean, you need to put everything on those platforms. The question is the platform correct to build what you think needs to happen? But I tell you what, I can't give any investment advice on particular projects that I think look interesting, but I tell you what I find interesting is this time last year, the market cap was roughly the same. But over the course of a year, the technology has expanded tenfold. It really has. People have been working this night and day. So I think a lot of projects at the minute that have executed, have done the ICO or have done a token generation event, have a good team, that have the ability to actually have a shot, a chance at potentially being around in the next 10 years, I think they're incredibly undervalued at the minute.
Interesting.
You want to look at projects that are still communicating and still putting things up, even hiring. I look at these things. Are they hiring people? Because if they're actively hiring people, well, there's something going on there. But if it's, you would think anyway.
Dead, you want to worry.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the things that I invested in last year, and they haven't put comments up in months. You know what I mean? So you're wondering what's going on there.
There's a few dead Telegram channels out there.
Yeah.
There's quite a good website called Dead Coins or something that runs you through all of the ones you really do not want to put your money on.
Well, actually, on that, I also wanted to add, I think what has been happening over the last few months, on the back of the ICO frenzy that we had, that the tokens that did not make sense raised a lot of money, right? I think investors are becoming a lot more maybe a little bit jaded on the status of the SEO market, but also what I'm really seeing a lot of is very detailed thinking on how the value of, say, utility tokens should look like. What are the valuation methodologies? How in the protocol the value actually gets transferred over to the token holders rather than being retained for, say, company foundation. It's maybe a little bit easier for kind of EOS, Cardano, and kind of protocol levels now, but anything above that, there have been deals that have been raised millions of dollars, where clearly the token doesn't make sense. And so what I really like now is there's a lot more kind of due diligence going on and trying to understand those models and what actually does make sense in the token world, and I really, really welcome that.
I think we all do, probably. I'm going to open it up to the floor now, so if anyone has a question, we've only got 2 mics, so Stuart here. Would anyone like to ask the panel a question? We can't have covered it all. Here's one in the middle.
Taking a long walk to get around. We spoke a lot about adoption for public use and for how people are going to interact with the blockchain. But my thesis is that people won't be the main users of blockchains. I think machines will. I think there's a lot of interesting things when you start thinking about what happens in the arena of IoT, edge compute, and things like that. When you start thinking about artificial digital entities, and it really marries well with smart contracts and the things that you can do with that. So I was thinking, do you see anything interesting in like automation? Like, we speak a lot about distributed autonomous organizations, but besides the first one that failed, is there anything else that's kind of on the same par with what that opportunity put out?
Yeah, I mean, the future is that you have a driverless car that needs to get petrol, that goes to the petrol station, there's no petrol attendant at the pump, and the car pays with cryptocurrency for the petrol that automatically goes into the car. Like, that's the future, and I think people really struggle seeing that. So when mass adoption conversations come up, the best way to relate it to people is to talk about people using it, because that's what they understand. It really freaks them out when you say the future's going to be a driverless car filling up petrol without anyone at the gas station and paying with crypto.
But we've seen a couple of projects try to execute exactly that.
It's going to take time.
It's going to take a lot
It's going to take time.
Yeah.
But you're right.
There's quite a few going on in AI as well, so we haven't really touched on AI or IoT.
That's the trinity, isn't it?
Yeah,
the whole
yeah.
trinity, AI, blockchain,
let's
and
talk
big
acronyms.
data.
But, you know, all of those areas are ripe for exploitation, and there's some interesting things going on. I know about drones tracking crops and crops being stolen in the third world and this kind of thing. So there's lots of interesting things to watch, but it's very much a case of watch this space as far as I can make out. Is that how you feel about it?
I think there's a lot of things that don't need blockchain itself. I really do.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of hype behind the whole space, which is great, and it's going to take it to some great places. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, technology is really going to improve a few select industries. And I think there's a lot of people trying to incorporate blockchain that don't actually have a particular need to have it.
Yeah, so Shane identified the thing of trust. You know, projects are really needed where there's a trust issue.
Yeah, anything that involves trust can now be helped by the blockchain and by the blockchain technology.
Well, I think there was one thing from the private side. I think it was Allianz, one of the big insurance guys. They were looking at having a blockchain. So it would be an internal blockchain, it'd be private. It wouldn't be public, but private, with a token on it. Obviously, it'd be backed by currency. But they'd be able to transfer. They'd be able to keep all their transfers in house. So they'd be able to, you know, Allianz UK to Allianz Hong Kong or whatever, and they do it all internally. So there's no counterparty risk, there's no exchange rate risk. They'd be able to send the token from one end, from one corner of their group to the other. I thought that was an interesting...
Well, it's a good point that you raised, because there's a lot of conversation about enterprise level companies using blockchain technology, and it's interesting because on one hand, they wouldn't have a public blockchain that they would use, a public protocol, because they don't have control of the consensus of that. But then again, they miss out on all the adoption.
The technology takes off beyond where they are,
Correct.
and they get jealous.
It's a part of the conversation that gets lost, the difference between the public and the private side.
Yeah.
You know, you just hear blockchain being used, but you have to really specify what each group is looking at.
It's a really easy way to distinguish as well. Public blockchain is the internet, if you like, and private is like an intranet.
Yeah.
And I kind of agree with what you're saying, where the intranet will be popular for a period of time, and then it'll just be left dormant, like all the corporate intranets are at the moment.
Well, it already happened in the 90s. Big companies had a private internet, the
Absolutely.
intranet, right?
And now it's just
now it's happening
a
with
corporate
blockchain.
mess with nothing inside it. So
Exactly.
desolate.
Yes.
Hello. Tak. Not work? Yeah, he's working.
Loud and clear.
In my opinion, there's a problem at the moment with the usage of the crypto itself. Investors, they buy the crypto thinking, well, I hold it and maybe in a few years I will get some return of my investment. But they're missing the point that crypto has to be used to be go up in value. So what do you guys think about it?
Yeah, massively. Well, what I do with this example is a centralized model. If you had a website that does a lot of sales and there's a lot of transacting going on, they act as a middleman, and eBay and Amazon, whatever that type of business is, and no one is buying or selling on that, then that really doesn't have any value because no one's using it. And it's the same with a cryptocurrency. It's a network effect. Ethereum is really the most powerful at the minute. The reason why they have a network effect from all the ICOs that came out. I can probably make a strong case that most of the developers on Ethereum are really developers from an ICO that they've been paid to do. But I mean, what we really need is a network effect, or a protocol that's going to be built out by millions and millions of people all around the world with a language that's easy to understand, that hasn't been tailored specifically for one protocol in particular.
But it is also perfectly scalable and can govern itself without forking into a million pieces.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a really large and complex problem, and it needs to kind of be broken down scientifically and tackled one small problem at a time, kind of breaking into chunks. But yeah, for sure, I completely agree that we need to be using it. But ultimately, for everybody to start using cryptocurrency, we need to have a real reason to. And at this point in time, I don't believe there's something out there, the killer app, like you say, that really draws people to use it.
In Holland, we have a gift card. In Holland, we have a gift card at the moment that will hit the markets. And,
Is that your gift card?
and with that gift card, you can scratch at the back for your private key, and you can use it to buy goods in like Media Market or any electronic shop or whatever.
They normally get stopped because they avoid capital gains, and they're really avoiding many things. It needs to be more. It needs to work with regulations that are there at the minute for that to really be adopted. But I really think those companies are cool. It's there already. That's great.
Yeah. I think the speculation is a great advertisement for it, though. That's what sucks people in. You know what I mean? And ultimately, everything begins with speculation. If capital's going in, you want to see a return on your investment, and the early adopters are the ones that get rewarded over time. So I think it's a great way of sucking people in. It can get a little bit crazy, but ultimately it leaves people passionate. People do get passionate about it, then they want to work on it, and that's how it develops over time. It snowballs.
I'm going to ask one question before handing over to these over here. Mainly you, Rowan. I think accessibility is key, and for an average person entering the sector, the range of different exchanges, wallets, cold storage, hard storage is kind of quite a lot to navigate. Obviously, ZenCash have recently gone onto the Binance exchange, I believe.
We have, yeah.
So I thought it might be interesting from an inside point of view, what goes into that process, and what does it mean for ZenCash? And obviously, from the outside looking in, we can make our own assumptions, but something that every coin has got to go through, every token has got to go through in order to grow their project, to make it more accessible and to obviously build upon.
Yeah, I mean, exchange integrations are super critical, so that's what provides liquidity and easy access to people in different regions around the world. The process for listing is often quite complex and can very routinely involve large amounts of money changing hands. or at least that's the kind of way the exchanges are going. They see themselves being in a position of power, and generally speaking, they try their best to exploit that. But for us, it needs to be, we need ZenCash to be in the hands of as many people as possible. So listing on Binance is kind of one small part of the puzzle, but really we need to be listing in as many different exchanges as possible, integrating in as many different hardware and software wallets to provide slick user interface and the ability to store funds securely. So yeah, it's a part of the puzzle for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, just going back to the point on adoption again. Just curious if any kind of rising crypto businesses, potentially that have their own coin, for example, have thought about potentially merging with the financial institutions or payment service providers. I mean, I say that because payment cards are so common and the general public are so used to using payment cards and they understand how they work. Would you not see that as being an avenue for collaboration and also a way to make all kinds of payments more accessible and not just try and take over with cryptocurrency, still leave cash, electronic payment via institutional banks, you know, just as viable as crypto payments? As a way to get it quite quickly adopted into the market?
I think crypto debit cards play a really big part for sure. And
where are we with those at the moment? Because there have been quite a few, and quite a few of them have disappeared without trace.
What have we got now? We've got WireX, we've got...
I mean, 10x is still there.
10x, yeah, absolutely. The problem from my perspective with the current generation of crypto cards is that you're not actually spending crypto. You're holding a debit card, you've got an exchange app on your phone, and then your phone app basically exchanges whatever crypto you're holding into fiat, and then the fiat's on your prepaid Visa card and you're spending the fiat. So as soon as you exchange, you've kind of lost whatever crypto you're holding, and you're then in fiat. For me, the real goal we need to be getting to is actually spending crypto. So the merchant receives cryptocurrency, and they could either have fiat, partial crypto. And I'll take the chance to mention a project that I'm really interested in, and we're talking to at the moment, is a project called Flexa. And they're not going down the debit card route, but they're creating an application that allows really quick and easy payment in crypto, backed by their own fiat reserves. So you go into a shop, I was at Consensus in New York, and they showed us on the app. You select Starbucks, which is where we were, and it then gives you a QR code. You select Bitcoin, obviously, and scan the QR code, and immediately in the back end, so it's super user-friendly, they send an amount of pounds or dollars or whatever to the merchant, and then they debit the crypto from your account. So you're actually spending crypto, and you're doing it in a really clean, easy way. And yeah, it was instantaneous. So I think, for me, that's the way we should be trying to go, rather than the debit card route.
I mean, I'm fully aware of that payment process and how it works. It's having two balances, and obviously when one payment's made, the other one's minused from the account. But just also going back to what the gentleman at the front said about getting people to spend their crypto, if there's hundreds of thousands of people all over the globe who have cryptocurrency maintained in a wallet that they're not able to spend in all kinds of retail outlets, would it not be interesting to get them spending that crypto? Might potentially wake up the financial institutions to seeing how many people are using cryptocurrency for regular day-to-day payments, rather than trying to find another avenue to coincide with the one that already works. And obviously the more people that are spending it, using it, talking about it, then that brings the much wider population into being more knowledgeable about it, I suppose.
I 100% agree, absolutely. And we need to do both avenues.
I think
so
we
we're
all
actively partnering with a couple of point-of-sale systems at the moment that allow just direct, basically wallet-to-wallet crypto payments, and the merchant takes the crypto.
So I'm going to put a shameless plug in at this point, because one of the goals of the Crypto Investor Show for London and for Manchester in 2018-2019 is to have a crypto marketplace where you'll be able to buy things in crypto. Now, we're not quite sure how that's going to work yet. We're working on various merchants and different wallets and cards to be there so that we can be demonstrating and people can be actually using their crypto at the show, and hopefully with a number of merchants there to buy from, which will be a first, we think.
Yeah, so the hope is that not only will we have this at the Crypto Investors Show, but that the crypto village itself will take on its own persona, and maybe we'll have a dialogue with established markets in various cities where you might have an area of the market where they've got the crypto village stamp and you know that you can pay in crypto. It certainly is something that needs to be addressed, and not just the process for the consumer but also for the retailer. And at the moment, earlier on I mentioned this village, and one of the things that drove the idea was I went to get a haircut at my local barber's, and I realized I had no cash, and he only takes cash. And I thought, I wonder if he takes crypto, wouldn't that be great? And when I sort of asked him and told him, he said, actually, I just took Litecoin a couple of weeks ago. And for him, as a smaller retailer, there was I know there is an element of doubt, and Charles sort of touched on this, there's an element of doubt from a consumer. If I pay in crypto, what is the true value? And the volatility is kind of maybe not advantageous. But for early retailers to get involved, the idea of getting involved at the right time and holding some of that crypto, whatever percentage that is, and seeing the benefits. I mean, he was telling me at the time and showing me his Coinbase wallet that his £12 the gentleman paid for a haircut was now worth £51. So, you know, it'd be interesting to see what happens there. But I think we've got one more question we're going to take.
One at the back.
We've got one over
John.
here.
Maybe two questions. So we'll go one just here, and we'll go to Josh.
Well, first, thanks to all the speakers and the organizer for this good time. I'm going to dig maybe a bit into philosophical thoughts there, and I would just like to better your understanding of what's going on here. So I've written the questions in order to make it understandable. So when we look at blockchain, it has enabled the artificial money. Ethereum enables now contracts in this artificial economy. So all this is possible thanks to machines. And IoT systems have now become our oracles that enable these systems. So what do you think about a world where blockchain has enabled the humans working for the machines?
Interesting.
It's an interesting point, but yeah, you could argue that may be the case, but I see it more as humans developing technology to better the world for other humans. And that's kind of the entire point of why ZenCash exists. We're trying to make the world a better place. And to do that, we require technology, and we require to put machines and IoT devices and applications to work.
It's interesting to think of, though, actually. Sorry to jump in there, Charles,
Yeah.
because major blue chip companies invest in R&D. And part of their job is to make sure that their technology is up to date. And so, interestingly, blockchain at the moment is one form, but who knows what form it will be in a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. So I don't know, again, Charles, I don't know if you know of any particular projects or have had those conversations with people that you've met about R&D and the future of computing, that sort of thing, how it will affect blockchain.
A couple. I mean, there's been a few different situations where there's been new type applications that are there to replace blockchain technology. DAG, that's a big thing that's potentially going to overtake blockchain. That hasn't yet executed anything to prove or not prove that. But working for machines, at the end of the day, humans have to create the machines themselves. I'm sure there'll be a time in the future where that changes and machines can create machines, but isn't something I've put too much thought behind yet.
I've got a question over here.
Regarding, can you hear me? Regarding adoption, what do you think about the other side of the problem? I mean, retailers and merchants, they kind of have to advertise the price of their products and services in crypto to be able to enable this connection between consumers and retailers to increase the adoption. What do you believe about that? What do you think
it's
about
twofold, right? You either have a stable token that represents $1 or £1 or €1 or yen, whatever it may be, or you have the other side where people actually learn what the rates are in the crypto space. But any valuation at the minute that you give on the space is always done in dollars because that's what people understand, right? And that's the way it works at the minute. And maybe there's a future time where that changes, but at the minute you need to have an understanding of what the dollar or pound metric of that is to really appreciate the value of that.
So at the moment it's working on a pegging system.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think the volatility side of the conundrum is the problem right now, because if it got to the point where there wasn't much fluctuation, if say Bitcoin does ultimately get adopted by a greater number of users and the big account holders distribute it out into the wider community, and you don't get that volatility, then people will be able to think of what 0.1 of a Bitcoin is on a consistent basis. But when it's moving all the time, you can't.
Inconsistency and change are very difficult for people to deal with.
So you need that regulation, I think, of price stability, and then people can maybe think in that. It's like I was thinking about it earlier when I was a kid, we spent Irish pounds and then it changed to euro. And initially, you're always pricing the euro in Irish pounds, and then just over time you forget about it. And that's where we need to get to.
Yeah. There's one question at the back. Two more left?
Yeah, just to add into those two last points, quite interesting actually. So obviously, on the adoption side, just as products and services, my kind of opinion is, being someone that's in this space, and I'm sure hopefully you guys will probably agree, that I think for me there is this transitional period of adoption, and for me my approach is, I believe, and I'd like to think other people in this space, that can stand on stage and talk about this stuff, need to kind of have the attitude of falling on our own sword for a bit. So if someone comes and spends tens of thousands of pounds with me in Bitcoin, I'll take it. And if it's worth 10 quid tomorrow, I'll take it. Because I believe in this to the core. And if I can't accept that through my products, then how can I expect anyone to purchase them or develop this technology further? So I think there needs to be, other people, I know Patrick takes crypto for the stands at the shows, for example. There needs to be these leadership companies, I think, that are prepared to kind of take the volatility, because we need to, lead by example, ultimately. So that's one kind of thing I want to pick up on. And then the second thing about research and development was really interesting, the gentleman said, because I know there's a lot of products within the space, mining rigs actually being one of them, where the UK is fantastic for crypto, for R&D tax credits. A lot of customers of mine are larger institutional people that are actually putting this technology through as R&D tax credits, specifically for internal blockchain research and development. So I just kind of wanted to hopefully get the panel's opinion on if
sure.
those two things.
Can you repeat question one again in like a short form, just so I have it in my head?
Just do you believe that other people that represent this space should be prepared to fall on their own sword?
Yeah, I remember. So if you look at any individual entity that accepted cryptocurrency, it's always been a great success, right? Because the market's always been moving up and everyone's done really well with it. The reason why people talk about the potential loss is just to kind of warn people, so you don't have a merchant that comes into the space that doesn't really understand it, that thinks that they're going to accept Bitcoin, they're going to make a huge amount of money out of it, that don't. I think you just need to be cautious of that factor as well, that you're not trying to tell people. But I hear what you're saying, and I absolutely agree that people should accept it and accept that they're in for the long term, and it's not a sprint, it's a marathon at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And question two, anyone?
Repeat question two.
Do you want to repeat question two in short form again?
Sorry, just a case of asking whether or not if the panel has any opinions. So lots of customers buy my products and claim under R&D tax credits. That's something that's available to them. Are there any kind of tangible examples that the panel can give in their world where people are successfully using R&D development available funds in the UK to research this technology?
I mean, for us, it's massively value-add R&D. We have a whole team of analysts at SVK Crypto to look into the space and develop and help teams develop that as well. But I can't really speak for the enterprise side, which really the question is catered for, because that's not something that we really do on a day-to-day basis. But 90% of our team is focused on developing and understanding the technology and the new technology that's happening to make sure we don't miss an opportunity.
So Marina, are you seeing much in terms of R&D in the sector from the investment point of view as well?
It's very similar situation like here, also because my clients, they already implementing that, so that not necessarily kind of one step before that, which is research. But yes, a lot of work happening in this space.
It's right at the forefront of innovation, right? So there's going to be a fair amount of R&D going on in all respects.
Just one more question over here, and then we're going to wrap up.
Yeah, just
no pressure. You're the final question.
Yeah, closing question. So, what are the 2018 Bitcoin predictions from the panel?
And this is being recorded, guys. Just so you know, so the world is watching.
So, what are we looking for? A prediction on price for
by the end of the year? What, Christmas Day?
2018.
It depends what happens with the ETF.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the kind of big yay or nay for approaching all-time highs or even exceeding all-time highs, or kind of just meandering around where we are, potentially even losing a little bit from where we are just now.
But what's going to happen with the ETF?
It's a big question.
Yeah. I think it'll be approved. I mean, we've not had a serious contender come in and actually try and lodge paperwork to do it properly. Now we've got a serious contender that has all the right things in place to make it happen. So I think it might take a bit of time, but I think it'll happen.
But the announcement's been pushed back to September, right?
21st of September, yeah.
Oh, you know that? Yeah. What time?
Yeah,
10 o'clock?
I don't know. I have it on my
Watch the
phone.
space.
But yeah, I think on a side to that, there was a couple of things that they said when they rejected the previous one that have happened. So they've educated themselves to the point where they've said that Bitcoin and Ethereum are securities. They've launched futures, so they wanted to see some sort of product from that point of view, and they've just had time to see how everything works. So I think all these things are going to be really considered and push that decision.
You need the institutional capital, which is the word that these two have not used, and the institutional capital get into the market via an ETF, via the custody situation that we're facing that hasn't really been solved yet. That will take the price to the next level where it really needs to go. And regulation as well, so people can trust within it. There's a limited supply in Bitcoin, like we all know, so everything's looking good for it. I can't give an exact dollar figure.
I'm going to push for an answer here. So
I said 36K at the Christmas table.
Wait,
I'll stick to it.
So from the panel,
my birthday.
Wait.
My birthday is on the 31st of December, 90.
He's not lying, but Fiona, I'm going to include you in here because then we have 5 of us, right? So we're going to get an answer. So
can we get an answer from you too, Patrick?
No.
What are we going to do? We're going to take the average answer?
No. Hands up if you think that Bitcoin might reach new highs before the end of the year. We're going around the room.
Let's see from the audience. Hands up who thinks Bitcoin will reach new highs by the end of the year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Got to be bullish.
All right, and then on the other side, who thinks that we may see potentially 2018 lows before we see that high?
There's one.
Sure, it's tricky.
There's a lot of chat, isn't there, within the community, the Telegram group. Obviously, what we see at the moment in our Telegram group are people talking about, okay, well, Bitcoin is on a little bit of a rush again at the moment. Lots of good news coming in at the right sort of time, but they're also suffering. And obviously people are transferring their alt holdings into Bitcoin in the hope of some sort of rush. So from that perspective, again, the market has done this and it's happened, and we've seen that after a bit of cementation, I guess what the right word is there, but solidification, we've had then typically Ethereum, ZenCash, Cardano, some of the larger coins sort of going on a similar ride there. But any input, I guess, from yourself, Matthew, from the trading volumes from an eToro perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not privy to the trading volumes on our platform. That'd be kind of concealed information. But I have been looking at it, and my feeling was that as we approach 7,800, you could see that the volumes were looking good just from the exchanges. So it was, but because of the short squeeze, you were thinking, well, are we just in a similar situation as to what we were in April? So I wanted to see 7,800 be cleared, and then a strong close above 8,000, and it's looking like that today. So I think with that happening, there's probably a strong run to 10,000. That's where I think this will get a bit trickier. So if it doesn't break that, then yeah, potentially you could see another strong move down. But I don't know. It felt like it couldn't get any, from our point of view, from talking to clients and you know, even new accounts and things like that. 2 weeks ago, it was dead. It was absolutely dead.
It
just
couldn't
felt
get any more boring.
Exactly. And I was taking that as a bullish sign. It was like a contrarian, you know, if it's kind of people have got to the point now where they're fed up of it, they're not even looking at it.
Then we announced this event and Bitcoin has a bit of a...
That's it. Here we are. So,
well, guys,
so far so good, but again, you know, I wouldn't say it's a guarantee, but yeah, we'll see.
Thank you very much, and being a fantastic panel, can you give a show of appreciation. Thank you all for coming out as well and staying late. I saw a few people, their eyes awoke when the Bitcoin price was mentioned a few minutes ago, but thanks for hanging around. And Fiona, a couple of final words.
All right.
Yeah, so thank you to Rowan, to Matt, to Charles.